Now in the studio to discuss these protests further is the Iranian blogger Potkin Azaremhr. Potkin, clearly these protests weren't unexpected because of the anniversary, but how coordinated have they been, do you think?
Let me tell you something I just picked up from a reliable source on Twitter. It was saying, don't underestimate the size of the protest because they were scattered. They were at every crossing throughout the city. And certainly since the time I've just been in the studio, I've picked up something like 15 video footage, which is amazing how quickly they've managed to get it despite all the restrictions. And they seem to be at different places throughout Tehran. And if you add all these different scattered footage, you can see that it was quite widespread, but not just all in one place.
You talked about reliable sources being Twitter. That is certainly a sign of the times, isn't it? We are getting all our information from the web, effectively, to cover this story. But how reliable is it? I mean, clearly both sides are going to have an agenda. Why should we be relying on the video and the tweets and everything that's coming out of Iran?
Just a statement on Twitter, maybe not that reliable, but the film footage is quite believable. I mean, you know, you can see what they're shouting, you can see what the date is, you can see it's in Iran, you can see there's different places throughout Tehran. It's not in one place. And at the moment, this is the only source we've got, apart from the messages that we're getting from Tehran. You know, in the absence of journalists and correspondents, obviously these are what we have to rely on. But whose fault is that? It's the Iranian government who's expelled all the foreign journalists.
You'd expect, given the level of protests that we're seeing on the streets at the moment, you'd expect the opposition in some ways to try and take advantage of this, to capitalise, maybe re-galvanise the opposition to the government. But there doesn't seem to be anybody leading any of these protests. For example, Mousavi, nobody has seen or effectively heard from him for days now.
Let's not forget there's something like 3,000 people have been arrested. Only yesterday, just about everyone who was working at Mousavi's website, who running the website, right from the top employees to the very junior ranks working in the office, they've all been arrested. So they're under a lot of pressure. But I do accept what you're saying in the sense that the channel of communication is not very clear between the leadership and the people on the street. But there's also a...
Well, they must feel that they're not getting a great deal of backing, surely.
Who's not getting a backing?
The people on the streets. They must feel that there's nobody high up within politics who's actually backing what they're doing. It's just them on their own. The
resentment on the street is so much that they're not even waiting for the leadership. People are taking things into their own hands. They're not even waiting to see what Mousavi says. They knew today was an opportunity because it was a symbolic day to come on the streets and to make the protest. They didn't even wait to hear from Mousavi or to get a nod from Mousavi. It's the protests that are now leading the situation, not so much the leadership. But I just want to say that it's not just the protests on the streets. There are other forms of protest that's happening, but maybe it's not that newsworthy for TV media. For example, when Ahmadinejad went on state TV, every Iranian, they turned on their electric devices at the same time when the broadcast started, and that caused blackouts throughout the city. People are writing on banknotes, for example, or Basij are marking people's houses who they think they've been chanting from their rooftops with a red cross. And what do? People put red crosses on their houses to overwhelm them.
But the reality is that this is obviously nothing like the level of protest we saw in the immediate aftermath of the election. Isn't what's going to happen that the government, the authorities are simply going to, OK, they're going to have a bit of a clampdown on the streets, but basically they're going to wait until it all calms down again. The anniversary is over and they hope that people are going to go back about their everyday business and those protests will just quietly drift away. Let
me say that given the level of repression, I think all the viewers that have been following what's happening in Iran, they can now understand the level of repression that's happening in Iran. For every one person that was on the street today, I think there was 10,000 other people that wanted to be on the street, but were probably frightened to be on the street. But there's more days that are to come which the government is going to be in difficulty. But let's not forget the schools and universities at the moment are closed. What are they going to do when schools and universities open up? How are they going to stop all those gatherings?
All right, Potkin Azaremhr, we must leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.